Welcome to part 2. I am Miranda. This is my amazing husband Luther. And this is part 2 of a series that we have called Our Journey Out of Religion and into our promised land. And our goal for you is to help you discover your promised land and what God has called you here for the purpose you have for your life. If you have not watched part 1, I'm going to highly encourage you to go back to part 1 and start there first. I know we like to read the end of the book before we read the first part of it, but the beginning sometimes lays a foundation, and I want to make sure that you come with open eyes, because as we talk about this video, we're going to share some experiences we've gone through, and we're going to be open and real with you guys. And I don't want you to, maybe cast judgment for some of the things we might say, or maybe kind of pick it apart, because we might hit a couple controversial topics. And I want you to come with an open mind. And really, to have an open mind, you have to look at the whole picture. Yeah. So that's where you get part 1. Part 1, we talk about our past, the pain I had to walk through, the pains he's had to walk through, and how we met. That is really the foundation of what we've had to navigate to go through. So I'm going to encourage you, please go to part 1, have an open mind, and as you listen to part 2, lay down your thoughts, maybe what you were raised in, your experiences, and just come with an open mind, okay? It's easy to come in a place where you want to judge somebody. Well, why are they thinking like that, or why are they saying that? But that's really judgment and criticism, and we want to be really very, very careful with that. And I personally have to be very careful myself, because I tend to be too hard and judge people when I didn't even think through and look at their perspective. And so just kind of pull back and come with those eyes into part 2 with us, and come on this journey with us. Yeah. We're going to bring you into our life, the experiences we've had to overcome, and help navigate us to get to what we call as our promised land, into where we've really become free in our thinking and free in our faith, and really discovered this place that we are, we call it our first love that we once had when we came to the Lord, and really coming back to this place.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
No. Great intro.
All right, awesome. So we'll jump right in. We got a couple of parts to this one that we're going to do. First, we're going to talk a little bit about our journey in the church and our experience. So if you caught part 1, we ended with how we met. Okay, so we met in the church.
Yes.
I remember seeing him at the church. He actually, if you listen to part 1, you'll see that I didn't live local. I was from out of town. At this point, I was living about 45 minutes away from the church when I met him, and he lived in the town that our church was at. And so
I lured her.
Yeah. One of the things that caught me when I met him is the fact that he was serving God in the church. I could tell he was committed, and I could tell he really had a hunger and a desire to know more of God. And then you were pretty taken away with my drive. He knew I was committed because of the distance.
Yeah, but I could tell that she was fearfully and wonderfully made looking at her. So.
Anyways, it'll be a part 3. Anyways, yes. Okay, do you want to go?
Threw you off, didn't it? See, look at that.
It did.
Still got it. No, let's talk about our involvement in the church.
Okay.
Kind of some of the things we did.
So first we met, and obviously we got married. That was we met, and then within a year, pretty much of meeting,
we gave ourselves 12 months,
did not
and not
wait.
a day more.
Yeah, from the time we met to the time we married, it might have been like 13 months, but pretty much I think we were dating for about 3 or 4 months, and he proposed quickly, and then from there we just planned the wedding and got married. Because, at this point I'd had 2 kids. If you listen to video 1, you caught that. Yeah. He had 1. He'd been through a divorce. At this point, I'd come out of a divorce too. I don't know if I put that in part 1, but in one of my past relationships, I got married very short and quickly. But yeah, and so we both have had previously married, we had kids, we were ready to just get on with the next phase of life, pursue our relationship with God and what we were here to do.
Yeah.
And so in pursuing that, we went through a lot of the church system, a lot of the religious structure, because, well, that's what they say to do. If you're pursuing God, this is what you do,
that's
right?
That's what you have to do.
So that's what we did. That's what I knew as a child, and that's what he knew through his parents as well, and so that's just what we pursued together.
Yeah.
So I'll let you take the next step.
So like Mandy said, we were very steeped, especially after we got married too, because then we could we can serve together. And so this was like huge thing.
We went head on. Like if you know us, when we go and we're together, we're just all in.
Yeah, very bold people.
I
Yes, a little aggressive.
It was.
It was kind of wild. But so yeah, we both got heavily involved in leadership. So Sunday, Wednesdays, or twice on Sunday, Wednesday services, midweek meetings.
Leadership
we had a
meetings,
leadership meeting, and then whatever meetings you had for the auxiliary. So it was not uncommon for us to spend
one day we
3 to 4
calculated
days
when God,
week.
I remember at the very end when God, and we'll talk more about that, when God was shifting us and kind of telling us it was our time to go, and we had overstayed our welcome. You tend to overstay your welcome. We did that. And I remember driving into, I think it was a meeting, and I believe this was time, so our kids would actually, our older kids, especially our older daughter, would actually be upset and cry when we would leave for another meeting. She's like, "You have another meeting?"
Yeah.
She would actually cry because we would keep leaving. It was like we were so involved in church that our kids were neglected. They felt that way, and we weren't open to hear. And you might be thinking, well, wow, you guys are really committed, and that's not me. But I want to encourage you to lay down that judgment and ask yourself, ask your kids, ask them.
Yeah.
Where do you feel like you fall in compared to our commitment to church? Do you feel like we're overcommitted to church than we are to you? And your kids, hopefully they feel safe enough to tell you the truth. They may or may not, okay? But we started to recognize their behavior, especially hers, when we would leave. But I remember driving in one day and we were adding up all the times that we were at church, how much time, and then we included our drive, because we had about a half-hour drive, 20 minutes. And so it was literally 40 hours a whole month. It was 40 hours. So a whole work week, we were committed there.
Yeah.
A whole entire work week.
Yeah.
Okay, anyways.
Yeah.
So we were pretty committed. We were steeped in it.
Yeah, very steeped. But one of the things I think that allowed that or facilitated that rather, was the fact that we could serve together. So we felt like we are getting really close because we're doing this whole serving church leadership thing together, right?
Our relationship literally was based on that.
It was. It was.
As we go on with the video,
church.
we're going to tell you that there was a season when we left that church, and that year we left was actually a hard year in our marriage, because everything we knew in our way of communicating was in that system, in that structure. Once that system was pulled out, we didn't have much in common.
No.
We really didn't.
We really had to kind of relearn.
We did.
So
yeah, for about the last year, the year when we left there, God was really reestablishing our relationship again, because we didn't. It was all based in church.
Yeah, that was kind of the foundation.
Just like some people have kids, and their relationship is based upon their kids, and when their kids get older, they end up getting a divorce because they don't have anything in common. It's kind of the same concept, but with church.
Yeah.
And we did experience that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So during that time, not only were we serving together, I was still studying, still growing. So I had been pursuing, just taking a lot of theology courses and pursuing a degree in that. Really, what I was chasing was a pastorate position, pastoral position,
Yeah.
and. So I had been kind of, accruing all this stuff and just trying to get experience in this, because that's what they say. If you want to be a pastor, this is what you have to do. So I was doing the stuff, and so that was a big focus. So when we weren't serving together, I was doing classes. So I either got my nose in a book, or I'm going to the classes during the week, and this is in addition to working a full-time job. So
and having a family. We have 5 kids at this point.
Yeah. So we had 2 boys between us.
Yep. So when we got married, we had 3 kids. I had 2, and he came in with 1. So we have our 3 girls, and then after we got married, we had 2 little boys. And so through a lot of our religious journey, we had all 5 of our kids, chugging all of them along every time we turn around to go to another church service, another thing, like maybe this will be the thing that God comes in. Maybe this will be the thing that His. Yeah. Just a lot of mindsets.
Don't want to miss out.
Don't want to miss out. That was huge for me. That was one of the hardest things. I remember.
Can't miss a service. You might miss something.
I remember when we were going camping, and we used to camp a lot on the weekends with the kids. But I would never, we would go home Saturday nights because I had to go to church on Sunday. I couldn't miss church. And I remember a family went with us one time. They actually attended our church, And they went with us, and the guy would tease me, my friend's husband. He would tease me. He's like, "Oh, you don't want to miss church again?" I was like, "No, like, who wants to miss church? Or what's wrong with you? Like, dude, get your act together. Do you even love the Lord?" Like, I remember thinking these things like, "Hello, like, what's wrong with you? Why are you teasing me? Shouldn't you be there? Are you not passionate? Are you not hungry?" Like, that was my opinion, is you can't miss church. You're going to miss what God's going to do, and it can't go without you. You have to be there.
Yeah.
That's pride, and that's arrogance. When church can't go without you,
Yeah.
when you can't leave and go on a vacation with your family 4, 5, 6 times a year, 12 times, once a month, if you can't do that because things don't thrive, maybe you're too important there. Maybe you've built yourself up to be.
Well, I don't think it's an importance issue.
That's how it was for me.
It was,
I don't know.
it's not that they couldn't survive without us, it's we couldn't survive without them.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
really,
think it was both ways. I think
maybe.
we felt like we were too important, that we needed to be there because they needed what we had. And I mean, we know it. We're good. We've studied. We've proven ourselves.
We were amazing. So amazing.
So the mindset could go both ways, that you don't want to miss what they have, but if that could be the underlying excuse, that you really want to be there because you feel used, you feel valued.
I think it was pride on both of our parts.
Yeah.
It was just pride.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm chasing all this stuff and just trying to find our place in ministry, really. We're like, oh, there's a place we can serve over here. Maybe this will be the place that launches us and we get the kind of recognition that we want.
literally served in every area within this particular church. We served in every area of ministry except for, I think, one. Between him and I, we actually went through all the areas and we served at every one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of funny. It's like, wow.
Yeah, throughout the years, I can't, there's not much that we have not done there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty wild. Some things like the little kids ministry, not my strong suit. But we did it. We served.
Yeah.
But so we're just, we're trying to find our place in ministry, and some doors were open to us. A lot were closed, and we noticed that we kept coming into this pattern where we come into this ministry and we do really well, and people are like, oh, you guys are awesome, we like you guys, and you guys are doing a great job, and this and that, and the leaders within those ministries are really kind of giving us a lot of praise, and then so you kind of move up in that ministry, and then there's like an issue. Then it's like, you guys need to slow down a little bit, or you're a little too vocal, you're a little too bold.
Which, if you know us, we are very vocal and we are very bold.
Yeah.
God's had to teach us, and He's still teaching me.
Yeah, there was some things we had to learn because we had a lot of pride.
And there's still things we're learning.
Yeah, we did have a lot of pride. Probably in some areas a little full of ourselves, but there were other times where it's just like we would be invited to leave some of these ministries.
Yeah, there was times we
hard.
were asked. We were told. We weren't even asked. We were told.
Yeah.
Take a step back. You're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the significant ones for me is I was doing a men's ministry at that time. I was heading up that ministry, and it was going great.
It was going really well.
It was a great addition to the church. The body really loved it. I was enjoying it because I was being used. Yeah, it was doing really well.
I was working with you and helping you with managing donations, different things I was doing from administrative end, helping with breakfast, different things like that.
Yeah, and we had, it was really awesome because we had this team of guys, and you get to learn everybody's gifts, and you're pulling on people, and it was just a great experience. And we tried to grow it beyond the four walls, and that was my first butting of heads really with leadership, because the leadership was very clear, no, this stays in the four walls.
Serve our people first, then we go into the city.
Well, it wasn't...
Take care of our needs.
Yeah, it was, we take care of our needs to the exclusion of the city, really.
Yeah.
Because every effort we tried to take it out, it was either shut down, and finally, I think they just got sick of me saying, hey, let's expand this thing, let's move it out, and they just, I was invited to leave, basically. Yeah.
Called in for a meeting. Was asked.
Yeah, called in for a meeting and
was told that he was done.
Yeah, my question was, did I do something wrong? Did I overstep my bounds? Because, I had been reprimanded before for overstepping my bounds, and rightfully so. I got out of line on a few occasions.
And he humbled himself and learned.
And so, okay, all right.
That's what training is about. It's teaching and training.
Yeah. I just asked the question, did I overstep my bounds again? Did I mess up? What's... the answer was no. We liked everything that you're doing, but it's time for a change. And
it wasn't
that was hard. That was hard.
And it wasn't that, well, we're going to use you in another area, but no, you're just done.
Yeah, you're just done.
You're just done. And, I remember that season for him. That was a really hard season for him. It was a really hard season. We still stayed at the church for a couple of years after that because at that point, it really shook him. And I think he was ready, like, okay, God, is this our time done here and ready for the next step? But myself, I wasn't ready to take another step. You guys, if you listen to part 1, you'll know that I was raised there, and that's where my family all went, and that's what I knew, and that's what I was comfortable with. So I wasn't ready at that point to leave because I didn't see it from his perspective. This was his experience. I watched him, but I didn't experience the pain he went through until a couple of years later, and I got a taste of it.
Yeah, weren't you? Sure.
So a couple of years later, so during this time, he's struggling with the pain that he's facing and working through that. And I think he did a fabulous job. I mean, anytime you face pain, it hurts. And sometimes people act in different ways of, the pain or whatever. But I think he muscled through it. And he did it in a right way where he didn't just say, we're gone and we're leaving and put my foot down. He didn't drag us out of there. And I'm really glad he didn't because
the fact that you weren't ready. And, that was kind of one of the things that initially caused me to stay. But that did help me to process a lot of that hurt. And so it didn't develop into this unforgiveness or bitterness because I had to stay in that environment. So I'm like, I'm going to have to deal with this thing in my heart and get it right. I couldn't just, because believe me, guys, I wanted to just like, you know what? Skip you guys, I'm out. Yeah. That was my attitude, but I had to process that.
And then he got plugged in again later, so it wasn't his last time in serving. No. He got plugged back in again. So he processed the pain and the emotion. It was really tough. Processed the pain, emotion, got plugged back in, got plugged in with me in the worship ministry in some different areas and in some prophetic ministries. And so he was serving right along. We were serving together in some areas. Yep. But then I went through some things where God was really starting to show me some things that were going on that didn't quite sit well. And, treating people that I feel like not treating people the way they should be treated. I was starting to see some of that going on. Yeah. And it really started to get a hold of my heart. And I remember there's a point where I started to grow up. I started to speak and have a voice for myself, which is what got my husband in trouble a few different times. But I started to get there where I was like, okay, we say we love God, but we're telling these people they can't do this or that, and we're judging them for this or that. And, like we would maybe attend a leadership meeting and so-and-so's name came up, and then it goes into this picking somebody apart. And I'm like, what's going on here? What is happening? We're supposed to be encouraging, building up, edifying, and like, if it's okay if you want to, you got to take care of something going on, do it behind closed doors. Your whole staff and leadership does not need to know about so-and-so. Yeah. And it started to open my eyes, and I began to see what was happening within the religious system and the structure, okay? And knowing that the God we serve and that you represent him, like to me, this isn't just a job. Some things like this could be going on in a company or organization. They are not representing the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. They're not representing a faith. They're not representing him, okay? They're doing a business. They're serving people. They're meeting a need, making some products, whatever. But when you're going to represent him, there's a way that you do it and there's a way that you don't do it, okay? And yes, we are all learning and we are all growing. And so I started to kind of see some of these things that were going on. So I started to get a little more vocal in my thoughts and share my opinion, which the church should be a place where you can share what you see and experience, and it shouldn't come where you are judged and you hit a brick wall. It should be that both parties come with an open mind to communicate. But churches have not been taught how to communicate. And so when you share a concern, you're bringing your communication to more of an intimate level. And some people are uncomfortable with that, okay? We would begin to share some uncomfortable things that would question some things, and people didn't like that. They just saw it as rebellion. Yeah. And not really that, no, help me to understand, and if you come with an open mind, we can grow in this together. But instead it was looked at more like, well, you're rebelling, you're talking against leadership, you can't do that. Yeah, who are you? They question you. When really having a thought or opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. It wasn't a safe place to share that, and so when we would bring up some concerns, it definitely looked as rebellion, and it looked it wasn't looked at very good. So in the grand scheme of things, as we moved on, and I'm involved in some worship teams, some worship things, I was asked to step down within that, just like he was. It wasn't quite called into an office, but it was.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story, but and then same thing within, prophetic ministry that we were a part of. We were called and said, you know what, you're going to have to step down for a season, and there were some areas I did need to grow in. There were some things that I did need to change in me, but instead of helping me to help see, you just rip out that rug, it really didn't train me up as a person. It really caused me to fall flat on my face, but God used that, and God was really shifting us out at that time. So God caused those things to happen for a reason.
Yeah, I think looking back, we can see that God was really calling us. We had a different mindset. We really did. We started. Our eyes were being opened to the Western church structure, and we weren't okay with it.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it came down to. We weren't okay with it, and so we would see these things pop up that didn't align with our viewpoint, or not even our viewpoint, but just that didn't align with what we saw in Scripture.
Yeah, the Word of God. I mean, that's what we should be based out of.
And so we would call it out, and that got us in a lot of hot water. And really, God was like, okay, I need you guys to come out of this. And because of familiarity,
come out of the
because
structure,
of our comfort
zones,
this is the paradigm that we knew and understood. So we were hesitant to leave.
We didn't know what our faith looked like if we'd left the church. Like, we didn't know.
Yeah, that was huge. We're like, are we even going to be Christians if we leave the church?
Oh,
I don't know.
We're going to go into that, some of the beliefs that we had overcome in our mind. That was huge, the next step.
Huge, guys.
Oh, man. Huge. To get to freedom, had to work through a lot of that stuff.
So we were really hesitant, and I think God started using these situations where we were doing this with the leadership he was like, you're either going to come out or I'm going to push you out. And we're a little slow on the uptake sometimes.
Sometimes he pushed. He's like,
he had to push us out. He had to push us out because we were just like, no, we'll just ride it out. We'll ride it out. And it finally came to a point, it's like, no. Okay, God, we get the message. We're a little slow, but we got it. So
then we, at that point, knew our time there was done.
Yeah.
And knew it was time to look for something different.
Yeah.
For their sake and for ours. Now I have amazing relationships with a lot of the people, but so it was time for us to navigate to a different adventure. So, we did look at another church and, felt at home, and we thought it was important for the kids to be plugged in with other people in the community.
Yeah, community has always been a priority for us.
So we did plug in through a season. We did not plug in leadership, though, because we wanted God to work on us. And so we went through some extensive healing where God really healed our emotions, some extensive personal development, some extensive mindset shifting that we had to face. We had a lot of these religious thoughts and barriers in our mind that we had to overcome. We had so many hurdles that we had to overcome of the beliefs that were entrenched in us. And I think I probably had more so because I had attended since I was so little.
Yeah.
It was so entrenched in me. I don't know. It's hard to know who had the most. I don't know. It's not a competition. But that was the next step. So God brought us out of the church, and then we told you a little bit of that journey of how he got us out. A lot of the contradiction that we did, till we finally were like, okay, God, you are taking us to the next step. And so then the next phase of that was really coming free in our belief, in our mindset. And so we took some extensive time, a good year or so, for God to really purge us and to help us shift. Invested a lot into us personally, into some personal development, a lot, where God really helped us sort through some things. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of those mindsets that God had to purge us from. I'm going to share with you guys, again, don't judge me. This is my journey, okay? I'm going to share with you some of my mindsets, some of my hurdles that I had overcome. I remember when I left there and God showed me how critical I had been when I was in leadership. He showed me how judgmental I was. I remember there was one young lady that was in the youth group. I had to go and apologize to her because out of the name of leadership and what I was told to do, being a leader, I totally really turned her off to what God truly is, and it hurt her faith in a very not good way, and turned her off to God. And so I had to go back and own that, and I had to apologize because again, I was the one that did those actions. I wasn't forced to, I was told to, but so I did, but it was my choice to actually follow through with that. I could have said, no, I don't believe this is right, but I didn't. I was like, sure, I'll be the big boss and go in, and I hurt her. And so I had to go back afterwards. I had to own it, and I had to make it right with her and repent. And there was some other people that, when we actually left the church, I actually went back and I had to repent because of my judgments and criticism that I held in my heart. And so when we left, we knew that we were free on our end of where we had judged and wrongly hurt people. And that took us into a phase where God now could grow us and mature us.
Yeah. So and some of these mindsets were adopted because of the culture there. There was a lot of big emphasis on it was a kind of a performance-based culture.
And depending on what congregation you're connected with and your experience with systems could be very different. You might not have experienced it, but there's people around you who very well could be experiencing it or who has experienced it. And so maybe when you learn these things, whether you've had to walk through any of these mindsets or not, you can help somebody become free from them. And maybe this will also help you to not judge them for some of their beliefs that they have. But one of the really big ones, do you want to go ahead and start?
So like there's the performance-based where, and this was something that we struggled with, is there was a lot of emphasis on, if you're not meeting the standard, right? And so there's a lot of these extra biblical standards that were adopted, which any organization is going to have standards, whether it's your job or...
Which standards are not a bad thing.
Yeah, standards aren't evil. It's not that they're a bad thing, but some of these were just kind of like, this is a bit much. But yet we're like, okay, we're in leadership. We have to represent this organization and we have to represent this church. So these are the standards. And there was just a lot of that emphasis that if you're not meeting the standard, it's almost as if your faith was called into question. Yeah,
like there was this invisible measuring stick.
Yeah.
And then if you didn't have your nice church outfit, it's so funny. My son, he was 2 and he called it a church costume.
Yeah, church costume.
He called it a church costume at the age of 2. Oh, Mom, look at that church costume. Yeah. I was like, that's kind of funny. I think he might have been 5. I don't know. Somewhere in there. He was young. But he called it a church. And for him, in his mind, we get dressed up for church. And a lot of churches do that, where you put your Sunday best on. And it's sometimes these are invisible measuring sticks that are there that aren't truly biblical. It's okay to look clean. I want you to have showered before you attend a church. Like, don't come in clean. Yeah. You should come clean anywhere because you're representing you. So you should be clean. But more of our measuring sticks should be based upon love and kindness. And, some of these more moral based, like, integrity and different things like that, not your appearance necessarily, okay?
Yeah.
So those are just some invisible measuring sticks that the church would have.
Yeah, and this is the thing, it's like, I think the thing that was frustrating for us is that if you didn't meet these standards, again, they would call your faith into question.
Yeah.
And that was the big rub. It's like, no, you can have standards, you can have convictions about things, and that's your right, and that's fine. But if somebody doesn't meet those, they're not lesser of a believer. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that was something that we had to deal with.
You feel judged, and we all know when we're welcome, and we know when we're not. We know when we're feeling judged. We know. You just know. I mean, you can pretend like you don't know, but you truly know. You truly know if you're welcomed, and it was to that point where if you didn't do it that way or a certain way, you just knew that you didn't fit in.
Yeah.
So another one that I struggled, this was a lot of what I struggled with. I don't know, it might have been more so than him, but one of them was drinking and, alcohol and how does this fit in the church? And this could open a whole can of worms as I even talk about this. But come with an open mind. And I struggled with this because how do I want to start this? Okay, so when I was younger, if you listen to part 1, you're going to know of my early years between the age of when I was young till about 12. My parents were very steeped with serving in the church. They were very particular about what we couldn't watch. Some of those things are very healthy. One of the things that wasn't maybe not so much healthy is drinking. Like, you don't drink, like never. Like, they didn't show me a healthy way of how to have a glass of wine and not be drunk, and like, sure, you can enjoy some of these. I didn't see that. I never saw that, okay? And I think it's very healthy to teach kids how to be responsible with stuff like that. And so drinking is a big one. That was a big no-no at this particular church in leadership, I guess. If you want to be in leadership, this was kind of something that they've adapted. But it was, for me, in my mind, it was a big mental hurdle, and I would judge people. Oh my gosh, you call yourself a Christian and you're drinking that? Yeah. What are you doing? You know? And it was, for me, I had built this belief in my head that if you didn't serve God, and this belief was established, your beliefs are established usually between about the age of 6. Up until then, your beliefs are established. And so this was a belief that was built in me when I was very young. And so this was a belief I had to overcome that was entrenched in me since I was a child. And I remember when we first left there, and I was like, there was this thing inside of me that wanted to enjoy a glass of wine. Like, I'm like, you remember that, don't you? I remember that. It was a very interesting time. It was really the power, and this goes to show the power of belief, okay? I so had this belief that it was wrong and it was bad, and
felt like you were sneaking around.
I did. It was
glass of wine in a restaurant. Like, I don't know if somebody might see this.
It was crazy. So I remember the first glass was when we went to, I think we might have already left the church. I don't remember if we were attending there. I think we'd already left at this point. Yeah. But it was a matter of now I was overcoming these beliefs that I had entrenched in me to be free, to enjoy my promised land, to enjoy things in life. So anyways, we went to Traverse City in Michigan for a little getaway, just my husband and I, this intimate time for just us. And I wanted a glass of wine. And so that was the first one I'd had. Now, if you hadn't caught video 1, I'm going to encourage you to go back, because I've drank plenty of times in my life, okay? I've drank a little too much. Yeah. I probably had alcohol poisoning, to be honest. There was one time I probably should have went in. It was pretty extreme. Like, I've been very drunk, okay? So I'm not going to say I've never had a drink and no. See, this is what's crazy part about it. This was the crazy part. I've had years of way too much. And then I had, when I was younger, where I wasn't allowed to have anything, and you don't do that. If you serve God, you don't drink. Drinking is what the world does, okay? Yeah. And so when I was in the world, you better know that's what I did. But how do I take that and actually not have bondage and shame around it? This is what I was discovering as I left the religious system. And so, we had a nice getaway. I ordered a glass of wine. It was in Traverse City. It was a great time. We had an amazing time that trip. That was a really good getaway for us. And then I remember the second one I had was in public. It was actually in the town where the church was, and I was so nervous that somebody was going to see me. And this could be crazy, but the next day, so I drank that, but I was like nervous, like who's going to come in? What are people going to think of me? All of these thoughts were in my head. I actually got sick. The next day I had strep. The worst case of strep throat I'd ever experienced. I was so sick. Do you remember that? It was at Christmas. I was so sick. I can't help but to wonder, the night before, when I was coming out of this belief that I couldn't have wine, what are people going to think of me?
Yourself up.
Like, that fear was like entrenched in me. It was so weird coming out of that belief system that was entrenched in me while I was young. Yeah. That was a big hurdle for me, was drinking. And now to this day, I have a glass of wine. I don't hide it. I don't hide it from my kids. I post it on social media because God showed me, like, don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. People need to be free. Yeah. I don't get drunk. I don't actually have a desire. I don't have that desire. And I actually don't even desire to have a glass of wine very often. But when I do it. I now have a glass. Not a big deal. But I still think it's a waste of money at times. And I don't think it's best for your health. And so now it's not that I totally can if I want to, but do I want to?
But you have the freedom.
I have the freedom, but I don't always have the desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there was stuff like that. Clothing, now, not so much for the guys. This is probably more something that the ladies dealt with. I feel like sometimes the guys feel like this in the religious church too, because you have to dress up and look nice. Well, it depends on the church you go to. Let me correct. There's a lot of newer congregations that are opening up where it's more casual. Yeah, it's not so much of an issue.
Yeah, it's becoming more casual, which is good, but I know there is some guys that don't. My husband is amazing. He loves to have button-up shirts all the time, and he just doesn't mind dressing up. He actually likes it, and I actually like it too.
This is me dressing down.
I love wearing heels. I feel power.
I like it when you wear heels too.
Heels are a good thing. Anyways, so dressing up can sometimes be fun, but not when you have to do it to make you feel like you're actually valuable, and somebody special. But clothing is a big hurdle for women. It's a big hurdle for women in the church. And I remember when I came back to the church after my few years out in the world, and like that season of drinking, I did drugs. If you call it part one, you're going to hear I had 2 kids at this point. And so I remember when I came back to the church, I'd show a little cleavage. I didn't think anything of it. Like, I'm going to church and I was wearing a dress. Like, come on, at least I'm dressed up here. I'm wearing a dress, showing a little cleavage. And well, I remember in the restroom being politely asked by an older lady, honey, you really should put something under that dress. You really should cover up a little bit. And that started to that belief, you know what? I got to start looking more modest. And so it was a shift to where my appearance now started to matter, and like I started to get insecure. So before when I was in the world, I was not insecure about who I was. I was okay. I was confident in my skin. I didn't care what people thought of me, and all of a sudden it began to shift because I was asked to cover up. And so that was a whole nother layer of religion that got put on my head. There's a lot of beliefs out there. Should women wear pants? Do they have to wear dresses? What does it look like? You know what? Being comfortable and free in your skin with what you want to wear is okay. And the church doesn't teach that.
Yeah, and we're not talking about, you weren't ever dressed like immodest. But
I just had a little cleavage.
Yeah,
my boobs are showing a little.
Yeah.
But it wasn't even a lot. It was just like, yeah.
So, and that's not what we're talking about here. It's not like, she came to church dressed like a stripper. But it was just one of these, it was another expectation that was taken above and beyond what Scripture would call for.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yeah, and that put a belief, and that started to build a belief in my head. One, insecurities now starting to question, should I wear this or should I not? Am I spiritual? Am I not? So now, not only am I learning how to have this amazing relationship with God and falling in love with my first love and experiencing His presence around me, now I'm more worried about, should I wear this? Should I not be wearing this? Can I do this or can I not do this? And so my relationship now is no more focused on this love that I have of growing my faith in God, but more about what is my appearance and what do people think of me? That was the mindset that was beginning to grow inside of me.
Yeah. So just another form of bondage.
Yeah.
Really.
And then, another interesting thing and is, in my relationship and my walk with God is I gained a lot of weight. So I came into church, when I came in, I was confident in my skin, wasn't addicted to food and all this crazy stuff. Like I was just living life and and then I ended up in my peak of serving God within the structure and the system. I gained a ton of weight. I gained over 50 pounds. And so it's just interesting how your whole mindset can shift your whole physical appearance. That I went from this person who was confident in her skin. It wasn't like I struggled with weight my life. That wasn't my story. Some women I've worked with have had to come out of that, and that's tough. That's a whole other story, but that wasn't me. And so I was becoming this person that I never was. It was really weird. It was really bizarre.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre.
Definitely a different season.
Yeah.
So the next one we want to talk about was the attitudes towards sex. And this is huge, especially
I'm going to let him talk
in the church. You don't like my analogy.
No, I actually want to hear what he's got to say.
So really kind of the attitude towards sex was that it's a lot like cleaning the toilet, right? Everybody has to do it.
You compare sex
it's in everybody's house.
That's sad.
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, but nobody wants to talk about it, right? So it was like kind of this dirty business that everybody has to do, but we're not going to talk about it. We know it goes on, but just don't bring attention, all this kind of stuff. And I think for us, especially with our past, with divorce and lots of promiscuity.
It was obvious we had sex before we got married. We had kids to prove it.
Yeah. So it was just like, there was a lot of shame. There was a lot of shame that we had to deal with. Like, should we even be in ministry? We were married and we were divorced, and we obviously had sex before marriage because we got offspring. That's a testament to that fact, and all this kinds of stuff. And so, yeah, it just, I don't know. It was just a lot of shame. It was, and I don't know if we ever, during that season, we just kind of just shoved it under the rug, did like everybody else. You don't talk about it. that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I had a lot of bondage when it came to sex. A lot of bondage. Obviously, I had kids. I was a sexual being, like, who's not?
Yeah.
I mean, and so what happens is when the religious system, depending on what yours looks like, but any just religious system, when you tend to hide things like drinking and sex and different things like this, like when you begin to look at it as it's something shameful, what's going to happen is, one, you're a sexual being, period. God designed you that way.
Yeah.
And when you hide it and you shame it, it's going to be hidden behind doors. Because I guarantee you're a sexual being, people are going to have sex. You're either, one, going to shut off that need inside of you, which is what I would do, is I would actually close the need off. And I would it's a need and I need to give that to my husband. But I would even shut him off from that need. I closed him off, and that hurt our marriage tremendously.
Oh, yeah. Because
I shut him off. This need that I had that he was meant to fulfill, this need. I ignored the need. But other people, one, you can either ignore it or you can fulfill it in ways that are not healthy.
Yeah.
Okay? In very unhealthy forms, which is where you kind of get some pornography. You might get idolatry, and that's where a lot of that stuff comes in, because you have a need, period, and the church does not teach you how to fulfill the need. Okay? And so getting free in this area of sex was a big part. It's a big story, a big part of my journey. Big part of my journey. To be free to where I can freely talk to sex about my kids. I couldn't even talk to my kids about it. Like, I couldn't. I have talked to my kids about it now. They know a lot of stuff about me now, and they know a lot of stuff.
Well, it's important that you don't carry shame. You don't carry shame around sex.
Yeah.
Just because you're a believer. It's like, no, the Bible has a lot to say about sex.
And a lot. A whole book on it, if you want to know.
It's created by God for husband and wife to enjoy one another, and there's no shame in that. That's a beautiful thing. But when we treat it shamefully, then people can adopt that shame, and then that will bleed out into a lot of negative manifestations in your relationship.
Yeah, like we said, like, when you're welcomed or when you're not. Like, when you're welcomed into a home and when you're not welcomed. It's the same thing. When sex is welcomed or when it's not. And if you're raised in an environment where you don't talk about sex and it's not welcomed here, that mindset is adapted. And that's how I was raised. My parents didn't talk to me about sex, and by the time I was old enough to really even understand, if you listen to part one, they were into drugs and stuff a lot. And so my parents never even talked to me, but I had to figure out what sex was myself. I did. Yeah. And I figured it out. I ended up having kids, so I figured it out. But a lot of that religious mindset, you just shut it down, you don't talk about it, different things like that. But your kids want to feel safe. They want to know that you love each other, and they want to see you kiss. They want to see parents do these kind of things and show their love. And I'm not saying you got to do it in public and be all crazy. Yeah. Or you can. It's up to you. I don't care. But it's healthy for your kids to see that kind of stuff. It's healthy to talk to them about what is sex. Like, they want to know, what is this thing?
Yeah, it's better that they should hear it from you from a perspective of, this is designed for your benefit. These are the boundaries around it. This is the freedom around it. All these kinds of things. Have them learn that from two loving parents who have adopted a biblical perspective about it, versus going out to the world and experimenting and reaping all those effects.
Yeah, and unfortunately many people have just not been taught about this amazing gift inside of marriage, what sex and intimacy can be. And it's beyond just the action of sex, but intimacy really is a deeper level. I talked when I would shut that door of that desire for intimacy with my husband, it was really starting to kill our marriage. And intimacy is really communicating. We talked about, bringing communication to a deeper level, we try to do that in the church, but we weren't accepted. Yeah. We try to bring up issues and situations. That's how you grow, is talking about these things.
Yeah.
And, a lot of that is where husband and wife, they need to talk about stuff like that. That's all a part of intimacy, not just the physical end, but those communication end and sharing and listening to each other without opinions and judgments, all is a part of sex. I wasn't taught any of that. I wasn't taught what it was like to have true intimacy beyond even just the action of it. The action's amazing, don't get me wrong. But this definitely adds to the depth of that, where you feel safe to share your heart with each other. Intimacy is, I can share my opinion with him and he's not going to throw it back at me and judge me and criticize me for it. Whether he agrees with it or not, he's going to hear me talk. And together we talk and we can figure things out. We bounce ideas off of each other. That's intimacy.
Yeah.
The sex is, when you get to that level, sex can be really good too, because you feel safe to share your desires and what you do want to have in the bedroom and what you don't want to have in the bedroom.
Yeah.
You can
it makes
share
it a
those
safer
dreams.
place for sure.
Yeah.
I think another struggle was the wife's role in marriage, which, as everybody knows, is barefoot, pregnant, and in the kitchen, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah. Which I still kind of like that. I mean, I don't mind being barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I'll just be honest. I don't mind it.
So maybe just touch on that though.
Okay, the wife's role was a struggle for me too, because I have more of a strong personality. I have an opinion and I have my thoughts, and I want to share. I want to be open. I want to share. I am not designed to hide stuff. If you ask me a question, if I lie, you're gonna know. I just can't lie. I'll be honest, whether you like it or not, I'm going to tell you the truth. That's just the way I am and the way I'm wired. And as a wife's role, sometimes women are taught to be more submissive and be quiet. I didn't know who I truly was when I was in religion. So when we were undoing a lot of these mindsets, a lot of stuff was personal discovery in me and who I truly was, and the voice that I play a role, how my role is in our marriage, how our role is in the home, how my role is even in just my relationship with God. It really was a self-discovery and getting my voice back. So if you're a lady and you're watching this, or if you're a man and you have a wife, encourage her to share her thoughts. Encourage her to speak up. Some women are not as bold and as vocal as I am, and they're a little more quiet, but I promise you they have things deep inside they want to share, and they want to feel safe, because God gave them a role within the relationship to work as a team together. It's not that one dominates each other. It's supposed to be more of a team, cohesively united together, where you share your dreams, you share your passions, you encourage and you build each other up. That's true intimacy. And getting to that place where I was free in my mind to find me. I was so wired to please everybody else. What did they want? Well, this is what I got to do to serve here. This is what I'll do. If this is what I got to say, I'll do it this way. Instead of learning to hear God for myself, learning to find out my dreams, learning to find out what I needed, it's really just self-discovery and learning me. And there's nothing wrong with that. I went through a season where I had to discover that and learn that I do have some things that I want to share, things that could change lives, and I shouldn't be silent.
Yeah. So it was just that was a growth process. I had to learn to let you express yourself, because I was, nope, the wife's supposed to be submissive. She's supposed to do everything I say and all this stuff, and she has particular roles, and we can't cross those lines or any of that. But we really had to learn to, okay, what are her strengths versus my strengths, and her weaknesses versus mine, and how do we intersect these together to where we're both maximizing the benefits of the relationship and not doing this all the time.
Yeah. Because once you learn how to come together like this, work cohesively as a team, your family, your children will find their position, they'll find their place, and that's really where you can step into your promised land together.
Yeah, it makes the relationship so much more.
And it's not that you don't have trials. I mean, we still, to this day, we have some things we have to navigate through.
We never argue. What are you talking about?
Whatever. We still have things we navigate through. We have hardships that come. But now, because we learn to work together as a team, we can navigate through those things. And then, the sex is pretty amazing too, so that does help. So.
It's a bonus.
Just saying.
So, let's talk about, that's part one was kind of our history, the foundation. Part two, what we're talking about here is just some of the things that we had to overcome as we transitioned out of that system. And a lot of the things that we've shared, it's churches, they're not evil. There's lots of well-intentioned people who just have a heart. They want to serve God, but they've been sold on this idea that this is how you do it. And that can look different all
invisible measuring stick. We'll put it that way. There's an invisible measuring stick.
And that measuring stick is not always biblical. And one of our biggest things that if you follow us for any length of time, you'll hear us say this more than once, is that the structure, it's not necessarily the actions, all the actions that are being done in a typical church, at least in the West here, but it's the structure, the model that it's based off. That is not what's found in Scripture, and that creates a lot of these kinds of issues.
Yeah, and if you trace the structure and the model back, then it goes back all the way to Catholic heritage and Catholic roots in Catholicism, and it really was when Constantine stepped in and really changed things up, and that's when Catholicism was born, and that's when you see more of the church model that was born.
Yeah,
and that's what the structure is rooted in. So just like a tree or a vine, then like if you're pulling something up, if its roots are not based strong on what God designed it to be, you're going to be attached to that. You really have to, the scripture does say to lay the axe at the root. So to really cut something off, you have to lay the axe at the root. And unfortunately,
otherwise it just springs back up and it just looks a little different, but it's the same foundation.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's what the structure is built upon. And that's why you see a lot of religion stuck in there. A lot of these mindsets that are not biblical. If you go back to the Bible doesn't tell you that you can't have amazing sex with your husband. Actually, it's completely different. If you read Song of Solomon, you're going to see some rated R stuff, some amazing sex in that Bible. You're going to see times where, Jesus never said you couldn't drink. He said don't get drunk, but he never said you could. His first miracle was wine, So a lot of these mindsets and these beliefs are not biblical.
Yeah. So, just some of the things that we had to work through, and depending on your background and what God is calling you to, that may look different. Maybe you go to an amazing church where you don't have any of these issues. Maybe they're very biblical in their approach, and hey, that's awesome if you have that. Yeah. But I would suggest that those types of churches are few and far between.
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't see some of this stuff until you get into leadership too.
Yeah, that's true.
Sometimes when you are just in and you're attending, it can seem fine. But the more you step in and the more you get entrenched,
you start to see
and then you don't realize you're adapting the same mindsets that they've adapted. You don't see it until you get more entrenched in it.
Yeah. So where we're headed now, or where we are, since we've kind of come out of that system, now we do, as far as ministry, in that sense, we do a lot of, we'll go speak different areas, but we do a lot in our home, because we try to embrace that New Testament picture of the early church, where they met in homes, where there's smaller fellowships. It was more intimate gatherings, right? Where everybody had access to share their gifts and use their talents and make a contribution to the gathering for the mutual edification of everybody there. So that's what we're focused on. That's kind of been our paradigm, and that's looked different throughout the last few years. We've given ourselves a little something over here, or switch it up to over here, but that's the general feel of what we've done. And again, I trace kind of a lot of that foundation back to my experience with that early home church fellowship, because man, that was amazing. Just saw so many people.
That was in part 1.
Yeah, just saw so many people come alive during that season. Saw more miracles, saw more healing, saw more people accept the Lord. We did more outreach, just all these things that the church really should be doing.
Yeah, and this small gathering that he had consisted of people that came from different walks. You've seen some that did Catholic, some that were Baptist. You had different beliefs, different denominations. They laid all that stuff down when they came to the small group fellowship. They laid all those beliefs down. They came with an open mind to communicate, just like we talked about, a husband and wife being open to share their thoughts without being judged, without being criticized. They came to a place that was safe to share. And in that environment is where your faith will grow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we saw huge, like for me personally, just my personal spiritual growth catapulted in that environment. And I saw so many other people that were there. They just strong believers. Strong believers came out of that.
Yeah.
So.
And then the church isn't designed for something like that. It's not designed to sit down and share your thoughts. And I mean, especially when you're learning faith, you're discovering what is God and who is it. You have all these questions. It's like your mind opens up to a whole new world, and it's an amazing world. Yeah. And you have all these questions, and you're like, if I could just have somebody answer some questions. That's what this is designed to do, is the small in-home church gatherings in a safe place where you can ask from somebody who's experienced. different things like that. And that is our goal, and that is our desire, is to help people discover, what does that life of serving God for you look like? What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, and that's kind of, again, that's our focus, with the in-home stuff that we do, and even stuff outside of the home, because we're always talking about, okay, making discipleships, discovering God for yourself, what's the plan and path that He has for you, because you're not here by accident, you're not here, it's not a mistake, whatever the circumstances surrounding how you got on this planet. If you come from a good background or a bad background, or your parents didn't intend to have you, but they did, or whatever the situation is, God put you in this time, in this space, for a specific purpose that only you can fulfill.
That's right.
So,
and it's not by accident you stumbled across our videos. It's not by accident you're here, because there's something inside of you that is searching. There's something inside of you that is longing and that is seeking.
Yeah. So that's our heart, is to people who have had a similar experience, or who have had to make the transition from a traditional religious structure out of that. Because when we first came out of that, we had to navigate a lot of hard stuff, like, what does our faith even look like anymore?
Can I drink? There's some hard stuff we had to navigate.
Yeah, I think it came down to...
in our relationship, because if you listen to part 1, we talked about our relationship. All we knew in our relationship was built in the religious system.
Yeah.
So we had to discover what was marriage to us. What does our relationship look like outside of the religious system?
Yeah.
Just like your marriage can be based upon the kids you have, and when the kids are gone, people are divorced. It's interesting. When kids are gone, divorce rates are up, because they don't have they haven't developed this relationship. We had to develop that. Ours was just based in the church.
Yeah, that was a tough time for us too. It was a challenge. In all honesty, it was a challenge to our marriage.
Yep. Yeah,
and,
it was.
By the grace of God, we navigated. He helped us navigate those waters. But yeah, our foundation was built on a religious structure.
So when we left, it was very shaken. It was shaken, but it was a good shaking. And still things still shake in our lives today, obviously. But we have a solid foundation, so we can withstand the pressures. We can withstand the winds that come.
So, I think that's it for.
Yeah. So our question to you that we want to leave you guys with is to look at the community that you're around. And ask yourself, where do I want to be in 5 years? Is this community going to take me to where I want to go? Take off your all of your preconceived ideas and come just with an open heart. And I encourage you to take it to God and say, God, where am I going to be in 5 years? Is this community I'm a part of going to help me get to where I want to go? And I promise you, if you seek, you will find. If you knock, He will show you. I promise you, He will. Okay? Have an open mind. When you walk through an encounter, or there's something that is said that triggers you in your spirit, ask yourself, why is that triggering me? Why what this pastor just said, or this preacher, or this person said, why did that trigger me in my spirit? God could be getting your attention. We were triggered many times before we left the church. God was getting our attention. We didn't listen. We didn't listen. Yeah. And so when you get those triggers, ask yourself, what God do you have for me? And come with an open mind, come with an open heart, and He is good and He will show you.
Yeah. So
that's your action step. That's your homework for the day.
Yeah. So we will see you guys on the next video.